Welcome back to the Safety for Our Sisters Symposium. We've had great speakers so far, and we have two more. I'd like to now introduce Shara Giles, a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation and of Cherokee descent. She's the board chairwoman of the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, an organization to address domestic violence and enhance safety of American Indian women and children. She is also a trained social worker, and her professional experience has ranged from child welfare investigator to tribal college instructor to director of operations for a Native woman-owned civil engineering firm. Shara's topic is titled, More Than 7 Times for the Next 7 Generations.
Thank you. It's Jay Stongo. My name's Shara Giles. I am Fuswagi from the Bird Clan in Tikachka, Broken Arrow tribal town. I want to thank my sister here for providing me with some medicine for protection as I tell my story and my journey, so thank you for that. It comes from the West Coast, from the lands of the Kumeyaay. My journey that brings me here today began long before my awake memories would allow. As a young girl, I was taught about stranger danger, good touches and bad touches, and that my body was my own. What did not translate when I was younger was how I was to be treated and respected in a relationship or in a marriage. I grew up in a community where domestic violence between partners or spouses was normal. At 5 years old, I witnessed a fight happen in my neighborhood with a married couple. And it seemed like there were at least 20 adults around, and no one did anything to stop this fight. What I didn't realize then that this had become a weekend event for the community, and most people were just thankful it wasn't them this time. During that fight, I was relieved to see a police officer arrive, but he was only there to make sure innocent bystanders weren't hurt during this altercation. I watched him stretch out his arms as I thought he was going to protect the woman, but instead he was acting more as a referee to keep the crowds back. To this day, his words haunt me. Because they were married, there's nothing he could do. I remember thinking that at the time, then I'll never get married, or at least I'll make sure I marry somebody that doesn't hit me. Fast forward a few more years. Between 10 years old, I was sexually assaulted by a very close relative. Back then, I didn't realize, even though I was taught that my body was my own and those things weren't supposed to happen to me, I just still felt very wrong, and I felt like somehow this was my fault. And even at 8, 9, 10 years old, my memories, I tried to block that out so I don't have a good recollection of the time frame, but I remember actually reading something that my mom brought home. She went to a training on how to work with adolescents and how to tell if your child's been sexually abused. And I read that at 8, 9, 10 years old. So all those things I read, I knew I couldn't act that way. I called that talk how not to act. So I couldn't be afraid of this uncle. I couldn't be afraid to go to his house. I couldn't be afraid because my mom would know. And so I did everything in my power to still be around this uncle, but yet strategically every time I was there, make sure I was never alone or by myself, or even what clothes I was going to wear. I never went swimming because wearing a bathing suit was terrifying to me. So it took me another 10 years from that time frame before I disclosed what had happened to me, even though over the years, numerous times, my mom would always ask, has anything happened? Are you okay? This is your body, all those things. And I could never get the courage to tell her. It wasn't until I became a teenager and met a boyfriend that I thought I could trust, thought I could tell all my secrets to, that I disclosed what had happened. At 15 years old, I got pregnant. Now, research and statistics will say because of what happened to me and because of never disclosing or addressing that, that's probably why I ended up a teenage mom. But with him, I told him what had happened, and we had a little girl, and she was born with Down syndrome. Our daughter, we made sure, was never to be around this uncle because I had him sworn to secrecy. He couldn't tell either. But it wasn't until it was almost a family function that we're like, why can't she go? Why aren't we going over there? That I finally disclosed to my mom what had happened. It was just after I just didn't want to do anything about it anymore. I was free of that burden. I was free of that secret and that shame. That I just didn't want to deal with it anymore, and just left it to be. And of course, got myself into counseling, got myself into therapy. My parents did disclose to him that they knew what had happened and chose not to be around that relative anymore. But it was scary to think we didn't prosecute. It was scary to think he's still out on the streets to do this to anybody else. Now, at 15, again, I had gotten pregnant. My first daughter was born, and was still with this boyfriend, and went to his house one day with our daughter. And because I woke him up, I got pushed. And his excuse was because, well, you woke me up. I wasn't quite aware. And when he pushed me, I fell back. I fell over a basket of hangers and got cut by one of the hangers. And that was my first instant thought was, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to live what I had seen when I was 5 years old. That was when I first tried to leave. I only remember that and then when I actually left because I don't remember how many other times I tried to leave between that first push until the last choke. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, on average, a woman will try to leave an abusive relation 7 times before she leaves for good. I wish that was my statistic. Unfortunately, it was over 16 years before I had the courage to leave. So growing up a sexual assault survivor, growing up in teen dating violence, and now thinking this person is going to get help. He's going to be better. He's going to get on medication. He's going to do therapy. I chose to marry him and have 3 more children. It wasn't until the abuse was so bad that it finally dawned on me, and for some reason it didn't dawn on me before, that this man truly could kill me. One night he came home drunk, and he was so out of it, and I had something to do the next day, and he was supposed to have the kids, and he started to choke me. We were in bed, and he started to choke me, and I remember thinking, he's going to kill me, and then he's going to pass out, and my kids are going to wake up and think we're both asleep, and meanwhile, I'm dead. And it wasn't, and I started to yell because I spent so much time trying to hide it from my kids and try not to let them see those things. Because over the years, he had learned, he taught himself or learned whatever, he's going to hit me in the head. He's going to hit me in places that the bruises aren't going to show up anymore. And so when I started to yell, my youngest son got up and turned the hall light on, and he didn't quite realize he was just like, heard somebody yelling. And that's what saved me. My then husband rolled over, passed out. I don't even think he realized what he had done. I'd like to say that was really the last time, and unfortunately it wasn't. I didn't leave immediately, and for some reason I needed to keep putting on this facade that my life is great, my life is good, I got a lot of things going for me. Because I went from being a teenage mom to being a master's degree in social work, serving on my tribal council, and doing this all before I was 25. So at that time that choking incident had happened, I had a tribal council meeting that day. Took the kids to my mom and dad's, didn't tell them anything. Went on to my council meeting, and I sat like this most of the meeting, because at this point, the handprints had turned into bruises. Thankfully, I had a girlfriend. She realized something was up, and she said, "What's going on?" Because usually I'm very vocal in council meetings. I didn't say much that meeting, and I just broke down. And that was the first time I told anybody outside of my immediate family what had been happening for years. And she could see the fingerprints and just immediately went into action. We're going to get you out of there. We're going to do all these things. And me, I told her no. I got to do X, Y, and Z first. I got to make sure he knows. I got to make sure, what am I going to do with my kids? What am I going to do? All these things running through my head. And even though the house was in my name, even though I was paying all the bills, even though I was the one working and he was the stay-at-home dad, I still didn't find my strength in my voice to say, I'm in control of the situation. How am I going to leave it? But all those years he had brainwashed me to think, nobody's ever going to want you. You have 4 kids now. You have one with special needs. What do you got to offer? And yes, because he came from a family of affluence, that it was, then I'll take the kids. You don't have money. My parents do. They won't allow you to take the kids. We're going to get the kids. And that's what kept me there. It was a few more months after that I realized I cannot do this, even though he didn't hit me anymore, because now we're in this cycle. We're going to get better. We're going to go to counseling. We're going to make this work. I just didn't have it in me anymore. And to think my children are going to grow up like I did, thinking this was normal, thinking this was okay. But meanwhile, I'm telling them, don't let this happen. You marry somebody that loves you, or you be in a relationship where it's healthy and it's good. But that's not what I'm showing them, and that's not what they're seeing. And even when I thought they weren't seeing a lot of things, my children still have memories. Remember when Dad threw that couch? Remember when Dad threw that lamp? They were as young as 3 years old, and they remember those things. So now it's time for me to gather my strength for my kids, that next 7 generations. This can't be okay. This can't be normal anymore. And all those things that have been said to me and all those things, I just had to go with it and just say, this is my time. These kids are counting on me. And again, my oldest daughter that has Down syndrome, we live in a world, we don't even talk about the abuse that happens with people with developmental disabilities. We don't even talk about the abuse that happens with our homeless women that live on the streets and how much their lives are impacted and how much work we still have to do. But that's why it became a turning point for me. I turned my tragedy and shame into survival and strength, and it led me into a movement of advocating for increased protections and services for Indigenous women and children while strengthening our tribal sovereignty. Here I was, an elected tribal leader for the 4th largest tribe in the United States. What can my tribe do to protect me? What can my tribe do to help me? Our tribe is very fortunate. We have a family violence prevention office. I didn't even know about it, and I was on tribal council. What can they do to help me? So I walked into their office one day and said, I don't know what you can do for me, but what can I do for you? And they immediately went into action, and this is how we're going to create a safety plan. This is how we can help you. And yes, as a tribal leader, here's how you can help us. From that, I started to share my story. I found my strength in this group of amazing women that said, we are with you. We are doing this work with you. We are in this fight for you. When I got too involved in the movement, I didn't know what VAWA was. I didn't know there was a Violence Against Women Act, because in my world that didn't exist. And I kept thinking, well, we need to act. We need all these things to happen because they're happening too much and too often. And so as I got more involved, and mind you, it's only been in the last 8 years, I got more involved, got involved with the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, got involved with our tribal program at Muskogee Creek Nation, and that's where I am today, is turning all that pain and turning all that hurt and shame into being able to stand here today and tell my story. But I'm one of the few that got out of my situation. I'm one of the few that are still here. You've heard some of the stories today about the missing and murdered. I don't want that to be my next statistic. It's important to teach our children about healthy relationships, about domestic violence, about sexual assault. It's important to monitor, it's important to model that, it's important to show that, and if we can't do it, then find somebody that can. Because even though I couldn't show my kids that in my own home, I made sure to take my daughter to our program events. I took her to a domestic violence shelter when she was 8, just so she can know, if you don't feel like you can talk to me, if you don't feel like I would believe you, if you need somebody else to talk to, there are places that you can go. I'm honored to say I'm part of a work now that provides that for Indian country. The National Indigenous Women's Resource Center partnered with the National Domestic Hotline, and we opened our first Native helpline in Indian country to address domestic violence. It's called Strong Hearts Native Helpline. Some of you may have seen some of the cards or pamphlets out at the front table. That's a national hotline that was founded by Indigenous women, that's for Indigenous women, that's staffed by Indigenous women. So when someone calls, we understand all the needs and all the challenges it may be for your tribal community, or if you're out of your tribal community, how to get back or how to leave that situation. And that sometimes we don't throw away even our batterers. So how do you stay in a community where your batterer still is? So Strong Hearts, it's growing. That hotline is open 7 days a week now from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. The need is there. The need is great. It was just less than a year ago, we were only open 8 to 5 days a week. But the phone calls keep coming in. So that's part of the work that we're doing now, too, is trying to get Congress to fund that permanently so that we're not every year at risk of losing that, because it is saving lives. It is saving families. It is saving children. We get a lot of phone calls outside of domestic violence as well, because we know there's nowhere else to call. We have teens in these domestic violence programs. We have suicidal people that are needing somewhere to call, and they want to talk to an Indigenous advocate. So we talk to them. The NIWRC also founded another program called Native Love. That's to address our teen dating and our teens in healthy relationship. What does Native Love look like? We have taken that across Indian country. We have created toolkits so that our young people will know, what does Native Love look like in your community? We know everything isn't pan-Indian. You're not going to create one thing that it fits every tribe. And that's what we also need the federal government, to recognize too. We know how to protect our people. We know what's needed in our communities. Sometimes the funding isn't enough because it wasn't there for our communities historically. The federal funding that we get, tribal funding that may or may not be available. And this is where all of you come into play. Whether you are an advocate, whether you're an ally, whether you're a survivor, everybody needs to be standing up and saying, these are our women, these are our children, this is our community. With VAWA 2013, we had huge success because everybody did just that. And it wasn't one person or one organization or one tribe saying, oh, we did this. Look at this victory. Oh, look, we have a set agenda. Everybody agreed. At the end of the day, it's about the protection of our women. How do we get a Violence Against Women Act passed with tribal provisions? That was a huge, monumental win and success. That was on the backs and on the sweat and tears and prayers of all of you and all of the women that have come before us. We call the grandmother of our movement Miss Tilly Black Bear, a Lakota woman who was here having meetings in the bathroom before talking to congressmen and women, because that was the only place that they could strategize. They ate bologna sandwiches and slept in teepees or slept on cots on the floor or pallets on the floor on her reservation in South Dakota so that people could see outside of Indian country what the needs were in Indian country. The work is ongoing, but there's hope. There's always hope. For me, my story, thankfully, it has a happy ending. I'm here. I get to serve as chairwoman of one of the richest, most empowering organizations in Indian country, the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. We get to partner with people like Mary Catherine and Sarah Deer. Not because we're all legal experts and not because we're all educated or because we're from some rich family or some rich tribe, because we have a voice. And over time, we learned to use that voice. And over time, we had to make ourselves seen and make our stories known. That was my first involvement, was walking the halls of Congress, telling my story. It was the hardest thing ever, to be so public with about someone that's still my children's dad. They still love their dad. How do I navigate through all this? Some days I can tell my story, I'm very strong, and I don't shed any tears. Some days it hits me like a ton of bricks. It's always a healing process. We tell everybody all the time to take time for self-care, take time to share with one another and to love one another and uplift those that are going through those things. And those family members and friends, if you have someone in those situations, just keep being there. The best thing you could do is keep being there. I get phone calls all the time. My cousin's in this relationship, my sister's, and I'm so mad at her, and she can't just leave. Why can't she just leave him? And I give up. She's going to need you one day, and she's going to need to know that you didn't give up. You're going to be ready when she's ready. And hopefully it's not too late, but at least arm yourself with the resources that are out there. Keep encouraging her and let her know there's hope. For me, I married an amazing man, that he accepted all those things that were told to me so negatively. He understood, yes, I have a daughter with Down syndrome, and yes, she's always going to live with us. I have 3 other children. Oh, then they're fun. Teenagers, young adults are fun. But he grew up in a world complete opposite. He had a loving mom and dad. He had a loving family. And this whole world that I brought him into, he didn't know. But he was there every step of the way. And he'd be here today if he could. And just a plug for him, he's up in a video upstairs. No. The Native Nations video. But I say that to give people hope. And to say, yes, there are still unicorns out there. There are still a lot of good things out there in the world that even when you feel like nothing else you have to offer, when you're being told all these negative things for years and years and years, that you can find your strength and your power to know that you're going to make a difference. And that's what I had to do for my daughters and for my sons. You hear all of us women talk today, it is Women's History Month. But there are men in this movement that get it. There are men in this movement that have been batterers and now a part of this work. And we can heal our people. And our tribes and our communities know how to do that best. And I know that that's scary to say to some, because not all bad guys can stay bad guys. And we need them. We need to uplift them in a way that says we still are strong. We know these things are inherently not a part of who we are. So I end that to say, yes, there are things that can happen, negative, challenging things, but we are survivors. I love how Sarah did. We are still here. We're here. Use your voice when you can. Vote in these elections. Let your senators and representatives know what our needs are in Indian country. This museum, this space was built on purpose next to that Capitol so they could see us. That was intentional. I want to say, don't discount anybody. Anybody. You're going to hear a young lady today. She's young. She's new in this movement. Well, she's not new. She's actually been doing it for a while. Her voice is just as powerful as anybody else's, any elected leader, anybody walking through Congress now. We need all of you in the room to take these stories back home. If there's something you learned here today that you didn't know before, if there's something you need more information on, you can search all of us on the internet or come get our contact information or check out the NIWRC page. It's niwrc.org. We have a history and a timeline there, resources there. We have a toolkit there for when a loved one does go missing and murdered. We have advocates that are doing that work across Indian country. We're not centralized to one tribe. We're not centralized to one area. We make it a point that we're working with grassroots advocates, grassroots leaders, just everyday people saying, this is what I see in my community. This is what we're trying to do. And we take those stories, and that's what we take to Congress. That's how I got involved. I told my story at our program. They said, come to Congress. Congress wasn't getting what was happening to Indian women. They had to see us. They had to hear these stories from us. And we did that. There were people like Terry Henry and Deb Parker that spent months here, took times out of their lives to be here, walking the halls every day. So everybody, Violence Against Women Act is up for reauthorization. There you'd heard the other acts that are being up, Savannah's Act, Survive Act, and the NITOPA Act. They're all being considered at this time. Stay abreast of those things, please, and then mobilize in your communities to do something different, to do something that may not have been done before or that could be done again, so that everyone is actively calling Congress saying, this is what we need. We'll give you the steps, we'll give you the words, but also sharing those personal stories and saying those names out loud of those women that have been murdered or that are still missing. I want to thank the National Museum of the American Indian for hosting this event, for having the foresight and having the courage to have these stories told. And for all of you for sitting patiently through today, hearing all of these things, and hopefully motivating you to a call to action to make a difference, because you can. And because women and children's lives matter, and you are saving a life every time you take action. That's truth. So appreciate you all. Thank you, Mado.
Shara, thank you for sharing your powerful and your inspiring story.